Thanks very much indeed. And it's a great pleasure to be here on behalf of the working group of the European left. I'd like to begin by paying tribute to the memory of all those whose lives were destroyed by fascist forces on the road to Almería, and to all those who resisted, fought and died in the struggle against fascism in Spain. And it's an honour, a real honour for me today to be part of this event. During my own political development, the struggle of the Spanish Republic and the courage of those who went from around the world to aid Spain was of fundamental importance. And I remember well many British comrades who were part of the international brigades. The example that you set in memory of those fallen and your continued work today is a powerful one. It's an example to all those across Europe who face the prospect of the far right on the rise again. We are seeing the biggest upsurge of the far right since the 1930s, from street attacks and mobilizations to high government office. They use Islamophobia, racism, anti-Semitism to spread hate and fear. They attack trade unionists and the left and the rights and liberties of us all. This must be stopped, and we must be united across Europe and internationally to defeat this immensely dangerous political turn. Alongside all of you, our European Left Working Group aims to contribute to this unity and to help build international cooperation. The problems we face are not national problems, they are international problems and can only be solved on that basis. The far right itself is increasingly internationalized. Over the past 4 years, they gained succor from the Trump White House, and they are well funded and well organized. We have seen the impact that has had beyond Europe too. In Brazil under Bolsonaro, for example, a presidency that is a catastrophe on every level. The handling of the coronavirus pandemic by populist leaders such as Trump, Bolsonaro and Johnson has shown their incapacity to address such a serious problem in the interests of the people and their cavalier approach to human life. But the coronavirus pandemic is also giving some possibilities to the far right to grow. In Britain, at the beginning of the pandemic, we found that the far right was losing profile and support, and that social solidarity was rising. But as the months go on, we have faced an ideological onslaught from anti-vaxxers, from people who think it is their right not to wear a mask, that freedom means ignoring public health restrictions. The pandemic has also made social inequalities much clearer. The inadequacies of neoliberal economics and the failure of governments to prepare for a pandemic. Every government knew that such a pandemic was likely, that they have been identified as major security threats. But as in the case of Britain, health spending has been decreased and spending on nuclear weapons and militarism has been increased. Understanding why the far right are rising again is fundamental to challenging them effectively. Blocking their road in a lasting fashion is inconceivable without addressing the economic and political conditions, austerity and its consequences, which have enabled their re-emergence. But it is possible to do that. And while the far right has become stronger, they and their ideas are not the majority. In Britain, we have found there to be huge political reserves of support for multiracialism and social solidarity. And this is also the case on an international scale. The defensive struggle against racism and the far right has to be turned into an offensive, also against the neoliberal right, which has done so much to create the conditions for the rise of the far right, as well as for the pandemic surge. Inequalities have been magnified by the pandemic. It is not true that it is a great leveller. Those in working class communities are most affected by the virus, and in particular, we have seen a big impact on the Black and minority ethnic communities. In the US and elsewhere, this has led to increased popular protest, and taken together with the brutality of the US police, has led to the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement. It has mobilized extensively to oppose racism and to remove the trappings of colonialism that remain in many of our societies. In the US, we have seen significant conflict where far-right militias attempt to defeat the mobilizations of youth and oppressed communities. These are all part of the same struggle, and we have seen victories too. In Greece, the defeat of Golden Dawn, where following a long process and massive popular mobilization, the judges ruled the neo-fascist Golden Dawn was a criminal organization in disguise. This court verdict has ramifications for the far right across Europe and is an important step forward. Another victory has come in Bolivia, where the Trump-backed far-right coup has been overthrown in democratic elections and Mas has been restored to government with a huge mandate. Trump's attempts to overthrow the left in Latin America, part of his far-right crusade, is not succeeding. Attempts to overthrow the Bolivarian revolution in Venezuela have also failed. But much work remains to be done. We have two forthcoming events organised by our working group, which will address these key issues in more depth and from an internationalist perspective. On the 11th of November, we are organising a seminar at the European Forum, which is online this year. We are very pleased to welcome a representative from Desbandá, as well as Diane Abbott, MP from Britain, the former Shadow Home Secretary, who is a strong campaigner against racism and in support of Black Lives Matter. We will also welcome comrades from Portugal, from Germany and from Poland, where the far-right government has launched a massive attack on women's rights, making abortion illegal under virtually all circumstances. In March of next year, together with Die Linke and the European Left Party, we are organising the second No Pasarán conference, this time in Berlin. It is named for your struggle in Spain and the inspiration it has given to succeeding generations. The aim of the No Pasarán conference is to look at the rise of the far right in the current context, the US post-election, including potential economic and military threats, the impact of the pandemic and the economic crisis, and the racist upsurge in the Black Lives Matter movement. We will look at what is happening and why, how the far right uses these events, and how we resist. The event will be inclusive and aims to bring together a wide range of grassroots activists, intellectuals, trade unionists, and politicians. We will address the onslaughts on the Roma, on refugees and asylum seekers, on migrant rights, and the policing of the Mediterranean, which is turning it into a graveyard. We want to strengthen a radical left counter-narrative to overcome the ideological advances of the far right that have pervaded mainstream institutions and discourse. The defence of people's rights will be an important thread, including those of women, of workers and trade unionists, as well as our diverse communities that are under attack, including disabled people and LGBTQ people. We want to develop and strengthen European-wide mobilising in all these areas. One of our aims is to help movement building in individual countries across Europe, and to use the process of building the conference as a means of drawing different movements together, a bit like the preparatory process that used to take place in the social forum movement. But it's not clear now whether that process will be so possible owing to the current public health restrictions. In any case, the No Pasarán conference will go ahead in Berlin in March 2021 as a hybrid event, including both in-person and online events. We very much hope that Desbandá will participate and share your knowledge, commitment, and experience with all those fighting against fascism and the far right. Thank you very much, and solidarity.